Hey, everybody. I'm Phil. This is Out of Our League. We have Al, the Predator Tribesman, Caesar Towers, Gage, GF2 Cool,
He's not.
and then we have what's that?
He's not here. He's
I
Kevin.
know, but he's on the ones and twos. So we gotta shout him out.
Thank you.
And then we have our special guest, Ryan Colt Levy.
Is this the second time we forgot about Ben?
Who?
Yes.
I was going to say, you
I
guys
thought you were doing it to mess with me, Phil.
Yes, please be excited.
And of course, the wonderful. What was his name again? Okay, I'm sorry. Okay, Ben, please be excited.
What's that?
The wonderful. Can you please write your name out really quick? I just need to make sure.
Can you send it to me in a DM real quick?
That was like watching ballet in motion.
So professional.
Yeah.
So
Watching us do ballet because that makes sense.
we always start the show with a little bit of and I just want to say, Ryan, you're pretty good.
Oh. We are officially in snake territory.
We just like to do that
ready for the
whenever-
ASMR. That was great.
So I just want to say before we start the show, I want to hijack the show really quick. It has to do with Ryan, obviously. But, Gage, this is where I'm going to start sharing my screen. I was looking
Okay,
into Ryan.
thank you.
I was just looking into Ryan just to, like before we talked to him, and I looked up Ryan Colt Levy on YouTube. I was just going through it, and I was just like, that's weird. Okay, sure. Just keep going. Just keep going. What's this? Wait, I just realized him.
I can't see whatever it is that you're trying to show for some reason. Oh, do I have to watch stream?
Yeah, hit watch stream.
Hold on. Let me see. It's what is this?
No. I looked up your name.
Oh, I see what's going on here.
So this came up when I searched up Ryan Colt Levy.
Yep, okay.
And this came up too. And what's your association with Baby Shark?
Oh god.
I just want to get this out of the way first. What's your
no, sure.
What's your history with Baby Shark?
That's really funny. So that is because of it's in the audio of that. It's the singing and all that goofy stuff. I worked with a company called Pinkfong, who they did the Baby Shark song and all that stuff. And I had late last year I had worked with them on a bunch of different songs and things like educational stuff for kids. His voiceover is a very broad, line of work. So a lot of people, they think it's just like video games or anime or whatever it is that they're, focused on at the moment. But I mean, it's all over the place. So this was just a gig that I had happened to book. And it was the thing that like originally was just going to be like one session kind of thing, like do a couple of songs. And it wasn't originally for that. It was for like these like cats and all these other kind of critters, like singing songs about like all kinds of stuff around the world, traveling, like food around the world, clothes around the world, and very like super young kid songs. Really fun. And then they just kind of kept bringing me back for more gigs. And then one day they were like, all right, this is the next thing you're working. I was like, these are the Baby Shark lyrics. Like, what is like, and it was also catered to washing your hands because it was like right at the beginning of, and it was so weird, and like right at the beginning of the pandemic, and then it came out and it like exploded all over. It was like Time magazine, like all these things picked it up. I was like, this is so bizarre.
So did you record Baby Shark, or were you just the wash your hands version of it?
Oh, I didn't record the original one. No, the original that was a couple of years ago at this point, and that was
because I was wondering, like, you've been with Pink Funk for a while. If you record,
no, it's only been like maybe a year that I like since I first had started working with them at this point now. super cool, fun people to work with, and like, yeah, very unusual. I had the same reaction when they were like, "This is what you're working on next." I was like, "Really?"
I remember when
was-
you announced it on Twitter, Ryan. I was so excited because I knew what that was. I have a nephew, and all he ever watches is Ping Pong. And I was like, now I get to tell him that I know one of the guys that does the voices on Ping Pong. And
Dude, that is
he
so awesome.
like he honestly did like looked at me completely differently. It
And
was
now you get to
like it was just
Are
now you get to
jealous?
say
you're
that you
friends
actually
with the
had
Ping Pong guy.
You know
Yeah,
what?
you
It's
actually had him
really
on a show.
funny. What? What'd you say?
I said now you get to say you were on a show with him.
Hey, talk to him. Yeah.
Yep.
It's wild because like I am genuinely so proud of being able to do that stuff because, you know, like I grew up on Raffi and all that kind of stuff. Like I was that kid who listened to those kinds of songs, you know? So to be able to contribute, even if it's just a tiny piece to kids at that age now growing up, like that's a cool full circle thing. And to know that there are actually kids out there really watching this stuff, because like I didn't know Ping Fong, you know, I don't have any nieces or nephews or kids or anything, so I didn't know about them until I started working for them. So it was cool to see that they have real outreach. And yeah, it's like get hit up from people all the time. They're like, "Yeah, my you know, my little kid likes watching this video." I'm like, "That is such a surreal thing." Like
Yep. Usually celebrities have to wait until they're much older and they have kids, and then they go into like making Disney movies or appearing on
right, yeah,
Sesame
yeah,
Street.
yeah. And they're like, "I want to make
You
it for
have
my
that
kid."
nailed down.
Yeah.
You have it down. So
Yeah, now I'm just gonna go in the other direction, real extreme, like real violent right away.
Have you ever been in a situation where something like that either came on or was played, or someone was like, "Hey, check this thing out," that didn't know that you were a part of it?
Not yet, not yet, but I that would be a trippy thing. Like I think, you know, just because I mean, I'm still very much like, you know, a small fry and very much new in so many ways to the industry. That I feel like you know, all my friends and family and anyone who kind of is like knows what I'm doing. I've really, when I'm allowed to talk about stuff, I'm really loud about it because I'm just so excited. And you know, for the most part, people are pretty aware of whatever I've worked on because I'm like, you should probably check this out. I shove it down their throats. But I've definitely like, I mean, like Final Fantasy was a funny thing, like doing Final Fantasy remake because like I didn't have any characters that were like, you know, this is the guy, you know, like this is some big main character and just easily point out to people. But having like, you know, 12 or 13 different characters all over that game. And I still have friends who are like, you know, picking it up now months later and playing through it. And they're like, have you played this yet? And I'm like, totally, you should like run into this area. And like, you know, like, so like I have that a little bit, but no, not like, not to the extreme. That would be surreal.
Yeah, what was that process like working on Final Fantasy Remake? It must have been amazing.
Oh, dude, it was so cool. I mean, it's one of those weird things where jobs of that nature, unless you book ahead of time a character that you're aware like you're going to be going in to work on, these projects, if you're going in to do like NPC work or you know, certain things of that nature, they don't need to disclose anything to you until you are literally recording, like in the session. So I had no idea what the job was until I was there. I just knew that it was something that was going to be cool. I knew it was a video game, and I knew that it was like, you know, I knew like the bare minimum stuff, but it was a working title. It was all kinds of, you know, just like misinformation. And then you get in there, and I'm a huge, I mean, you guys know I'm a big game nerd. I love Final Fantasy. Like it's all very personally, you know, a big deal to me. So, you know, I'm one of those guys, especially this time it was safe to go in studio. So, you know, you chat with the engineer, you say hi to the director. It's all just kind of getting to know the people you're about to jam with. And I get myself situated and they like go in the other room and they turn the monitor on. And I'm kind of like looking at the script and it's just like, you know, I'm just kind of digesting all this stuff. But I immediately see Cloud and Midgard. Like I just see these words and my body just like, you know, like, instantly. And I was like, be cool, be cool, be cool.
Um,
amazing.
when a project
Uh,
like that is presented, like, is that given to you by like an agency, or like how did you come across the listing for that?
I that was actually before I had an agent. I booked that originally. A lot. I mean, I've only been with my agents recently in the last 5 months, 6 months. Other than that, I was doing everything before that by myself. Um, I it's one of those weird things where like I didn't really plan for this at all. Like in so many weird ways. I've always been an actor. I've always been obsessed with film and storytelling and video games and all of this stuff. But growing up, I grew up in New York, and I grew up kind of like thinking it was theater and film bust because it was a different time also. And by the time I was like 12 years old, I was playing guitar. I was, doing all this kind of stuff that I felt was much more hands-on, that I was in control of. And I was still doing plays and theater and going to acting classes and stuff, but it felt like I didn't know how to break into acting for real at that age in New York. None of my friends and family were actually in the industry or knew anybody. So there was no real understanding of even how to do it. But music was a thing that was immediate. I was like, I can literally tell my friend to pick up a bass and my other friend to play the drums, and like we got a band, and like there we go. So that
First, you get a
became
band.
sorry.
No, nothing. It was a bad joke.
I love bad jokes.
No, I was just
Yeah, come
like,
on.
'cause you're like, I can give my friend a bass and tell my other friend to get a drums, and you're like, it's a band. I was like, well, it's not gonna sound great at first. They don't know what they're doing.
Oh yeah, no,
You just gave poor
it doesn't
Tommy a bass. He's
doesn't
like,
it
I thought it
doesn't
was a
funny.
fish.
Tommy was the name of my last drummer. But it's
Nice.
He really could have
funny thing
played
is like
then.
yeah. Well, what's amazing is that they actually my first few friends that I forced into it actually were not awful. We weren't great, but it was amazing to like see that it actually kind of worked. But it ended up becoming a thing where like I really ended up having a music career for almost 20 years, and it wasn't like full on glamour, but it was, recording, touring, doing all kinds of crazy shows, and everything was very much like on our own terms, and that kind of led me way off path of ever pursuing acting full on because it didn't feel like it made sense to invest. You can't invest yourself 100% in two things like that are so diametrically like in need of so much effort and time and focus and everything. And so I chose the band, because I felt like I owed it to them. It was like we were a unit. I couldn't just be like, later, guys. So it became this thing that I just stopped thinking about acting as a real option for a career. And it wasn't until we moved out to Los Angeles 5 years ago that I finally was like, you know what? Screw it. I'm in LA. I may as well just, start submitting myself to open casting calls, like very like bottom of the barrel, extra work, cattle call, like, the most entry level thing I could, get on my own, scraps, because that was all I knew that I could, access at that point. It was like, I did all the things that you're supposed to do, as cheesy as they are. You get a headshot, you do all the things, and you're like, put yourself up. There were different websites, LA Casting, Actors Access, all these different websites that, you know, are great places for actors to find work at the start, commercial work, some voiceover work, on camera, all different kinds of stuff. I mean, now it's obviously a weird time, but that's how you get a start completely on your own. And that led me to getting extra work, getting commercial work, and little by little I was just building a resume. A lot of it was just saying yes to, whatever jobs I could get, whether it was auditions that led to things or whatever. And none of it was like cool or glamorous or things that I think most actors like pursuing the craft would think like, yeah, like this is what I want to do. But I was like, I've worked so many jobs my whole life that I hate. Like this is a cakewalk. If I could do any of this and get paid for it, oh my God, that's great. And I can learn. So for me, it was all like educate myself about set etiquette, about the process. Like if I was an extra, if I was going to be there for 13 hours, that's 13 hours for me to digest how the set needs to be run, how the AD is doing. Like I can just soak that all up. So
My question to you is, because I know, being a musician, were you a singer, by the way? Were you a
yeah,
singer?
yeah,
So you did a lot of vocal work. Do you think
yeah,
having done all that vocal work puts you at a slight advantage? Because I know I've
for
heard people
sure.
like Rob Paulson brings up all the time, if you're going to be a voice actor, you need to know how to sing.
Yeah, well, I think you know what it is. I don't know if it's needing to know how to sing, but I think I
Or like you need to be
definitely.
able to, like, if you're going to do like a wacky voice or something like that, you need to be able to sing in that voice or whatever.
Well, I think it's more the things with singing that have really worked in my favor are it's like breath control, it's understanding diaphragm, it's understanding how to like use my body as an instrument without wearing it out because I was in hardcore bands where I would scream for hours. I've been in every kind
Nice.
of band you could think of. So like my voice and my throat and my diaphragm have been through so many different layers of stretching and it's like I think about it very much like it's going to the gym and you're constantly needing to keep something in shape. Like you can be a weightlifter, but if you take, 2 years off of going to the gym, like you're going to have to start, from the bottom again to some degree. So I think to me it was like acting is the essential part of voice acting. The other part is using your voice as an instrument and making sure that it's healthy and can be used and not worn out if you have a session where you have to, you know, do efforts or scream for X amount of time or whatever, and then maybe you have a session the next day or whatever it is. Like you have to be able to know your body and your strength and keep that safe and secure. But the other part of it is like the last thing that I approach to any of this stuff with is like voice first. Like I never think about like a wacky voice or a silly thing or like how do I approach this like from an external place. It's always based on like what is the story saying? What is the character? What is the thing that it's asking of you? Because that's going to dictate really what's coming out of your body. You can you can adjust your voice for age or all the different things once you've like found the actual character, but I think that that's really what I've always been a dork for acting. And like that's what I brought in kind of from both fields, from being a musician and from really just loving acting and theater and like full on, still, I mean, even right before the pandemic, I was going to improv and scene study classes and, doing plays with friends and all kinds of stuff. It's something I'm a real nerd for. So even in the realm of like, even when you're doing anime and it's like, it's a real quick process, like I'm still trying to find, you know, the emotional depths in those moments. And it's like, as dorky as it sounds, like that's where I really kind of get off.
So it's less about the voice and more about the acting for you.
For
Yeah,
sure, because the voice
yeah.
is always going to show up one way or the other, and a lot of the time, intention is more important than how you say a thing. Like you can say the same word a million different ways, but how it comes out creates a whole perception from the other person, right? Like you can say I love you 10 different times and like, you'll react to it differently however many, how I say it those 10 times. So I think that like so much of it is what is your character going through? What is, who are they? And then the voice comes from there.
It's like hello versus hello.
Exactly. Like that's just those two options. You instantly get a whole other human. Like there's a whole story in the way that you just say that.
Yeah, that's awesome.
That's fascinating.
Speaking of the pandemic, for people that may be kind of interested in voice work or becoming a voice actor, do you think, without thinking about the pandemic now, the way it was before, do you think that someone pursuing that would want to move to like New York, Texas, or LA to pursue voice acting or acting in general?
Um, like as in pandemic aside.
Yeah, like if the pandemic didn't exist, we'll go into the pandemic in just a minute.
Okay, I see what you're
But
saying. Yeah,
pandemic outside, yeah, as if it didn't exist.
yeah. I mean, I do think that there are different elements to it. Like I think Texas for sure is very specific to dubbing and like that part of that voice work world. Um, acting at large, I mean, New York is very theater heavy. A lot of film too, but far more like if you want to do theater, go to New York. Um, and LA's got some great theater too, but it's far more on the independent side. Like, New York is where Broadway and off Broadway are really that's where you really want to go and sink your teeth into it. But LA in general is like, for film, for voice work, for almost, I mean, it's the entertainment station. It's one of those things that's just so apparent when you get here is like, living in New York, the billboards you see, like the occasional movie billboard or this or that or whatever, but you see so many different kinds of advertisements for things. You come to LA and you feel like the whole place is catered around entertainment, whether it's music or film. It's everything here is based off of that being like what the culture is. So, almost everyone you come in contact with is some form of creative person, whether they're successful at it or actually working or just aspiring, doesn't matter. But you throw a rock and like someone's here for that reason or has been here for that reason. Like every single person, in my radius of living is, an actor, a photographer, a whatever, and maybe they work normal jobs too, but it's definitely the place to come and really go for the thing. But it's not cheap to live here. It's intense competition. For all those reasons, it's like everyone's coming here to do the thing. And eh, just like anything, if you aren't willing to put in 1,000% and like, realize that it's not fair, there is no one way in, there's no one answer. All roads are different for everyone, and that there is no guarantee. And, like there's so many things that you kind of have to like acknowledge that it is just a crazy ri- or what, it doesn't matter how talented you are, whatever. Um, but if you want to do it and no one's going to stop you, like it's the place to be.
So, going back to like the games and television, how significantly different are they? Voicing between games and TV, and which one do you prefer more? Uh,
Oh man, it's well, as far as like TV, like for like animation and like dubbing and kind of stuff like
yes,
that versus they're similar and different in a lot of ways. It depends.
like say Final Fantasy VII remake and JoJo's Bizarre Adventure, so to speak, like comparing those two.
Different because of the actual like recording process. Excuse me. Hiccup. The A lot of it just comes down to like actual process that you go through, whether it's like with most anime, it's basically the same thing where you're going to be working to picture because it's a finished season already of something that you're working on. So you'll generally, when you're dubbing anime, it's like you'll see the scene that they're doing, so it may be a line or two. So they'll play you the scene once, like in a preview. You'll see where your cue is going to drop in, but you'll be seeing it all in Japanese, and you'll have your line, and then they'll beep you in on the next round, which is the actual recording round, and you'll do your take. So you kind of get a sense, like you get these little sound bites as you're recording of like, here's this moment, here's the emotional beat, here's the line, like this is where you're at right at this moment, like, and now go. So it's cool because you get to be put into this headspace, even if it's quickly. You get a sense of like, okay, I know what I got to do. Boom. Um, with certain games, depending on what you're doing, you're probably not working to picture because they're either X amount in development or whatever, or unless you are a character in a cutscene or something, like maybe you're working off an animatic or something if you're in a cutscene, but most likely if you're just doing like wild lines like as NPCs, you're just working off of a script, and it's more about fitting timing. That is just a matter of like so that they can place them in certain areas within the code of the game, like the way that it's just designed. So the performances, like uh, oddly enough, like for Genshin Impact, it was different than Final Fantasy. Where Final Fantasy, you had to have a lot more like within this time frame, you can make this line fit, but it has to fit XYZ, either slower, longer, whatever. Genshin Impact, we didn't necessarily have to adhere to um, the timing, so you can just perform the line, and then if it's a matter of like, all right, we need to speed that up or slow that down, you can, we got to adjust. But actually recording it was much more free form, so it's kind of different all the time. And then like live action dubbing, which is a whole other side of dubbing that a lot of people don't realize happens, is a whole other kind of weird element, because you have to, if you're cast in any role for a live action thing, it's because your your voice just kind of makes sense coming out of this person's body. Because with animation and stuff, obviously there's a huge leeway of what can stretch with who voices what. But if, let's say, any of you guys needed to voice match anybody else in this chat, like imagine having to like dub someone else and like find a way to make your voice sound natural coming out of the other person's body. So it's that kind of a thing where you have to account for like, this has to sound like a real person. This can't create that detachment. And you also have to focus more on the moments in between the lines. You won't necessarily be just doing a line and a line and a line, because in animation there are sound elements, there are sound cues. If someone's getting punched, it's in the audio of like a but in a live action thing, if we have to redub getting hit or something, we have to put that in the actual performance. I'll be
I
like
didn't
kissing
know
my
that.
hand and doing all kinds of weird shit.
I didn't know
So
that. That's interesting.
It's
yeah,
wild.
so one thing to just kind of go into for just a moment, when you talk about dubbing over a film, we're not necessarily talking about like a foreign film that came over here and is getting dubbed. I believe you're talking about is when, like, for example, in Logan, the scene when Hugh Jackman is running through the forest, he actually had to go into an ADR lab and redo all the sounds for that scene while watching it, all the grunts and stuff. Like, so when he's running through that
So it's
forest.
actually, you're right, but it's actually both.
Yeah,
Because
that's
it
what I
is
thought
actually
too.
the same. Yeah, I've done ADR stuff like that where I've had to go voice match another actor for like a film, and like put in their body motion and stuff. But it's exactly the same as having to dub a foreign film. Like there's tons of stuff I've done for Netflix that are German, Russian, French, all these different shows. And it's that same thing where like, you have to put the physical movements into it. And it's really trippy. It's funny. One of the first jobs that I ever did for Netflix was a dub for this show called Costa del Sol. It was Drug Squad, Costa del Sol. It's a really cool show from Spain, like really cool, like 70s kind of silly, goofy, like gangsters and cops, and like pretty fun show. um and there was a scene where my character had to like frantically run across a beach, and we had to do it a few times because it's one of those things where, because it's a real person, you want to match all of the strides, you want to like really fit it.
Mm.
So
So did they give you a really advanced microphone and put you on a beach and they're like, just go for it? Just
no,
start running.
it's not the environment, but it is like, if I have to run
Uh,
like whatever it is, and if you're watching the movement, you're just finding it. But you do that enough times and you really put yourself into it, you get really lightheaded. So like,
I just like
you'd be amazed at how like weirdly like physical it can get.
I just like the image of a voice actor just being like just like sit back and relax. All the guys just like running.
Well,
just, like,
that's the thing, is it's never going to look like that,
No,
because
I
we're
know,
actually
but
going to
like
look, the weirdest part is like, because you can't let your feet leave the ground, because you can't be
yeah.
stomping around, but I will be swinging my arms and doing all that kind of stuff. So I'll look like, is it T-1000 or whatever in Terminator? Like, I'll be doing this, like because it's all physical gestures. So like, I actually never record sitting down, because I find that like, one, it compresses your diaphragm, and two, I find that like I just instantly become lethargic if I'm sitting doing anything, and like I don't want to be like passive with this stuff, especially if you're doing something where you have to like, anime scream or something. Like you don't want to be like, ah, you want to get up in that
Is that a
sucker,
challenge? Is that a challenge? Because I can do that right now.
Don't hurt yourself.
Oh, I won't. I will hurt everybody else.
You know, this reminds me of Fantastic Mr. Fox. I don't know if you
Sure.
know this, but they
I love
went
that
out
movie.
there with boom mics and the actors like doing all the actions, and that's how they recorded all the VO for that. I wonder if you
Oh, it's
had,
interesting.
if you ever
And the
had
audio in
anything
that
like
movie
that.
is fantastic.
Yep.
They must have. They must have. They probably though. I'm assuming what they did was that was like a base recording for animatic. I'm assuming that they
Maybe.
did that, and then they probably went back and ADR'd it in like an actual booth because there's no way you wouldn't have all of that atmosphere, sound, and everything. Like 90% of actual movies, you wouldn't. You would be amazed at how much is actually ADR'd. Like if you're actually on a film set, think about like even if they're like quiet on the set and you're outside and there's 100 people like no matter what you have to fix that. That's why like I've done ADR for films where it's like you go in and it's like the scene is like dudes in a quiet space that for no reason should their audio be bad, and it's boom mic and everything and the whole thing, and they're like, yeah, we gotta fix this audio. It happens so often. So I think it's I would assume that's how they did it, but that's super cool.
Have you
Thanks
ever
for that.
have you ever had
Sorry.
something to where like you're called in to do something because the actor wasn't available and you got to go in and just like do like a breathing or something like that sounds
Yeah.
similar?
Yeah. Recently, I've had to do it recently because of COVID. Because they've had actors where like they'll do things where they'll get someone to voice match because right now people are quarantined in different states and all kinds of stuff. Like, so they're like, yeah, we literally just couldn't get the guy. Um, and it's interesting because I never thought of myself as someone who would end up doing gigs like that because I always assumed it was like, you hear of like Nolan doing Christopher Walken and stuff like that. And like I don't think of myself as like the impressionist guy. Like I'm not gonna be that dude. So it's weird when they're like, oh yeah, we just need a voice match for this normal part, like this normal guy in a movie. You're like, oh, I guess that does fit.
Is it for Final Fantasy Remake 2? Or are you just joking? Uh,
Go ahead.
no. I was just gonna ask a question from Kamel. Do you enjoy playing antagonistic roles like Squallow, or what kind of roles do you prefer to like play,
Oh
or
man,
want to play, it also?
I like doing it all. It's weird because I never it is that weird thing where a lot of the time I get to play against type because I always end up being bad guys in animated stuff, to some degree, or not necessarily like villains all the time, but like more of the sassy dudes. Um, which
Perfect.
is always fun. Yeah. The thing about being bad guys and sassy dudes and all that is like they're so much fun. They just get to do all the juicy, crazy things, and they're playful. It's like there's a reason everybody loves the Joker. It's not because he's a bad guy; it's because he's having the best time at the party. And as cool as Batman is, like he's the stick in the mud. Like if you had your choice, who would you rather play? And I think that's ultimately something like I'm grateful I get to do that, but at the same time I would love to get the chance to like, play a nice guy or like, it's weird at the same time like the beautiful thing about voiceover that I often think about is like you could play a donut. Like, you can play a stapler. Like you could like it's limitless, and that's what's so exciting is like what does a doorknob sound like?
We're laughing. I'm sorry, Phil and I were laughing. You just said Joker, and Phil has a great Joker impression. And I saw him
Yes.
for like 30 seconds.
Almost
He was
dive
just
in.
trying to do it.
No, I was thinking about it. I was like, I could tell you exactly who I wanted to be.
I like that.
I just saw him for like 30 seconds, just like.
Lean in. I'll take it as a sign anytime I see you lean towards the microphone like that. I'll prepare.
It's just
Don't hold back. Whenever you have one, don't hold back, please.
It's always fun.
You say you're not an impressionist, but do you have like a go-to voice? That like, if somebody was like,
No, I don't.
we need
I really don't.
X character.
I Yeah, it's weird. I don't because I think I always grew up around people who were like, I do a great walk-in, or like I do like everybody wants to be that guy.
You
So
never
I
have a
always
great walk-in.
electively exactly. So I always electively have done the opposite where I'm just like, I'm not gonna focus on, trying to be that guy because like there's so many people who are so good at that. Like I know a lot of actors who are like really, really top tier can just morph their voice into another human. And then some people are already like set voice matches for some people. Like, there's a Seth Rogen, there's a Jack Black, like all these guys, like there are people who sound exactly like them when you play video games with them in it, when you play, when you watch commercials with them in it, 90% of the time it's not even them. And it's that thing, because like they don't have the time or whatever. Um
The
so
the guy
it's
that
trippy.
does Clone Wars for Obi-Wan, his
Oh,
voice for why am I blanking on his name right now?
Ben,
Ewan McGregor?
on it's your favorite show.
I am too. He's tremendous.
Ewan McGregor? Is that the one?
Ewan McGregor, thank you. But yeah, the guy who does his voice in Clone Wars is phenomenal.
Uh, the
Yeah, I'm spacing on his name. He's a great actor. He's a great, and he does a ton of stuff. He does
Yeah.
so much stuff outside
James
of
Arnold Taylor.
Obi-Wan that you'd be like, thank you, James Arnold Taylor. And he's been around for a long time, man. He's been kicking ass for a while.
one of my favorite like voice matching instances is the voice match for Woody from Toy Story is Tom Hanks' brother, and I think that's really
Exactly, yeah.
funny. It's like
He does all the Kingdom Hearts games, he's all like, Tom oh, kitty. You know, Tom Hanks isn't gonna be,
yeah.
recording Kingdom Hearts. He doesn't need to.
I just think that's really funny that he's like not only like the less famous brother, but he has to do the roles that his brother is just like, nah, I won't do it. You do it. Like,
But it's like it's so not a like like he's talk about a win.
oh yeah,
Like he gets to do all that stuff, get
and live
paid,
in
have a
anonymity.
blast.
Yeah.
Yeah, and gets to like go about his day. Like so cool.
Be awesome.
Is there a dream franchise you want to be a part of, or do you want to do something new?
I
And
think it's like
that
both,
goes for that goes for anything, whether it's games, shows, or TV.
It's both. I've always, always, always been a huge Blade Runner fan. Um, so any chance to somehow be a part of Blade Runner, I think would be a dream in any capacity. I've always just that's just like, as much as I've loved Star Wars and all these things, like that's my Star Wars, as far as wanting to be a part of something. As far as like working with certain people, I mean, it's cliche, but like Kojima, I mean, would be the dream because he's just so forward stretching and bizarre and kind of you never quite know exactly what his mind is going to bring next. And I just really I love people that kind of think and work that way. Like Denis Villeneuve, the filmmaker. Um, you know, I love the Coen brothers and Paul Thomas Anderson. And like I'm a real dork when it comes to this stuff. So like I have a lot of long-term goals that I would love to get back into on-camera stuff when it's safe again and work towards those things too. Um, Still a ton of like video game franchises and things I would love to be a part of, but it's an interesting gig where like especially at my stage, the last thing I get to do is choose what I get to be a part of. I'm lucky that I have a great agent and I get to audition for awesome stuff and I'm working on really cool things already. Like I'm grateful to have been part of dream projects already. Um and a big part of it is like I I don't even worry about like foolishly being like I plan on doing this. I'm kind of like everything is
So you can
exciting. You
get
never
you
know
you
what's
just
around
you
the
just take what
corner.
you can get. Yeah.
Yeah, well, and it's also like, you know, there's always something new that is so exciting around the corner. There's always some young creative, some new storyteller, some weird, indie game or like some of my favorite video game experiences of the last few years have been, far from AAA. So there are so many kind of like I would love to work with Night School Studio. Like there's so many cool people that do dope, dope games. Like Oxenfree was like extraordinary. There's a lot of amazing creativity now in the unknown. So I'm really kind of just excited to be able to be in the soup.
And with that, that leads into what we were going to kind of delve into a little bit. And that's with the pandemic, have you found it easier or harder to find voice work?
You know, it's crazy. For me, I'm very, very, very grateful. It's been easier for me because I had spent a long time before the pandemic working with a lot of different studios and building up my career. Um, so that by the time I had to hunker down at home, I already had really great working relationships. I had finally gotten an agent. So at this point, I'm working consistently every week. I'm really very lucky that I get to do what I love, especially now. Like, it is not lost on me how fortunate I am, not just to be able to do it, period, in this, but also I know how fierce the competition is, how high the volume of people are doing this stuff, and to be able to continuously do it is just like a crazy blessing. Um, so I've been really lucky. I find that like I think I've been busier now than I've ever been, which is wild. But I don't know if that's just also because it's all from home and all I have is time to like just keep the momentum rolling. You know, I am happy to just keep jumping on things and working on things and sinking my teeth into stuff. So I think, I make that clear and I'm like, "Hey man, I'm down to party if someone else is." So, I'm around.
How has it been having to do production aspects of the work? Like, how long did it take you to get used to setting up your uh, equipment and everything? And how was that as a challenge? Was it?
It's been trippy. It's been interesting for sure. Like part of it kind of goes back to the music days where I'm really grateful that a lot of the bass stuff like recording software and microphones and interfaces like the bare, basic stuff that I really need just to do voiceover, I was already familiar with because I was using them for singing and stuff and for years we were doing home projects this way as a band. So my big hurdle was like I had to get a booth, I had to get stuff because I wasn't in any way fit to necessarily like full on record to ADR stuff like the way we have to now from home. And we were so used to I live in a part of town where I can just walk to most of the studios. So I would just walk to my sessions all the time. And I never thought I would need to hunker down like this until way later when I could like, just yeah, I'd buy a booth for fun to be able to have it at home. Now it was like a necessity. Um, the
Yeah,
biggest hurdle was more
now
like,
it's not for fun anymore.
well, but it's totally for fun, but it's like,
Oh
but
yeah.
I'm grateful that it forced my hand because it's it's been so great having it and having to learn more and more of the stuff that I was never quite good at and become more tech savvy. And there's a lot of stuff that it's more like how we actually connect with the studios and do we record on our end, do they, like all those different elements that has been the most kind of learning curve. But this far in, I mean, 8 9 months in, we started kind of getting back on our feet with studios recording like almost immediately, like by late March, mid-April, I was already working on projects again from home. So we've gotten collectively, all the different studios and actors and everyone all kind of doing this from home have gotten so much better at streamlining the process that collectively I think like the shorthand of language and understanding, like everyone's just getting better at it, so it's getting smoother and smoother like every few weeks. It's cool.
So, with you talking about it getting more competitive, Ryan, previously, what sort of advice would you have for sort of more up and coming voice actors or people wanting to get into the industry?
I think, you know, the most obvious one is the one that everyone, preaches first, which is really, really focus on training, really, really focus on becoming a strong actor. Uh, do not underestimate educating yourself, on the craft and not just your element of the craft, but everybody else's job. Like you should know what a director does and what they expect of you. You should know what an engineer does. You should know what a casting director does. You should know how to, you know the industry at large. And I think most people, if you do love a thing that much, you're probably already dorking out enough to do that. Like that's what I do. I'm constantly still reading books, watching documentaries. Like my downtime is basically what other people would just consider research. I just have fun. Um, so I think a really big part is like educating yourself and training. And there are amazing websites to learn from. Literally, I want to be a voiceactor.com, as like silly as that sounds, is probably the greatest resource for anybody starting from scratch, especially because it is D. Bradley Baker, the legend. It's his website. So it is, and he's one of the kindest, most like giving people in this industry. So he is giving you like, and it's like information from entry level to super advanced. Any question that you could theoretically have, he's more or less answered there. It's easy to get overwhelmed at the beginning, I think, when you look at the mountain of like what you assume the finished product is, or at least the working version of consistently of an actor at that stage. Like, don't worry about that part. My biggest form of advice of everything is take your time, be kind to yourself, take a deep breath, love the journey. Like, it took me a long time just to even figure out life and become
Mm.
like a person and enjoy what I was doing before I even remotely like got into this career. And I don't think I would have been able to do this in my 20s, just like emotionally. Like, I think I really needed to end up in my early 30s and like have this career happen in this right moment. And I think a lot of people are really concerned about like becoming successful quick, which is never logical thing to shoot for. So, take your time, study, love the thing, and let it happen. It will happen at its own pace and in its own way. And like you may find like some people I think, don't realize how many different elements there are into doing it, A lot of people like, I do voices. It's like, well, that's not the job. It's like there's so many different things. I mean, even with on-camera stuff, the amount of technical know-how and understanding you have to have as an actor to even just go to an emotional place or to understand how to, I mean, scenes are shot in so many different formats, and like you may be delivering, some really emotional monologue to what people assume is a character that they think is standing in the room with you, and really you're just talking to a little red X that's on a camera next to like Judy and Crafty, and like like there's all kinds of stuff that people don't take into consideration when they're looking at a finished product. So I think dig into it, educate yourself, learn the process, and see if you actually like the work, because you're going to be doing a lot more of the stuff that doesn't seem like fun, and that has to be fun. Like, if you're not enjoying doing the work, you're never going to enjoy the whole thing.
Mm.
So, a couple things really quick. I would like to point out that Jim Cummings, who you should know if you enjoy voice acting at all.
We have the same agent.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah.
But I would like to say that he got started, when he was 31.
Yeah.
And so, like, he's one of the most prolific voice actors in the industry. And just to throw that out there for anyone that's thinking about it, he got started when he was 31.
Yeah, man.
Awesome.
I mean, I'm going to be 34 in February.
I just turned 34.
It's like, hell yeah. Happy birthday.
Thank you.
Life is so not about numbers. It's about where you are in your soul and your mind, and like how prepared you are for a thing. And like honestly, to be a creative person in this day and age, you can't just be good at doing the thing that you can do. You have to be able to communicate to people. You have to be able to be respectful and write a well thought email. You have to understand when to get out of people's way. You have to understand so many different things that, like, for me, it took me a while to just be a fully formed human before I could even, like find myself into a career of stuff that I loved. And I really think that not just even music helping me like physically, I think going through almost 20 years of like the music industry in every way, shape, and form, warts and all, as ugly as it can get to as awesome as it can get, I learned a lot of lessons about myself and about industry and about entertainment and about manipulation and all these things that like that stuff doesn't go away. These industries are intense and weird and strange, and they can play with your ego and your heart. And, you have to you have to be as sound as you possibly can be, I think, in those places first before you throw yourself into this like kind of both a den of wolves and a beautiful koi pond. It's both.
Mhm.
Yeah, so I can say that for me, I just got my first paid thing not too long ago. And
Yeah.
it was very small, like nothing crazy, obviously.
You're
Um,
only 6.
yeah, right. But that one success, no matter how small it was, still like chipped away at that idea of like maybe I can do this. And
Dude,
that's
it's
after
first, it's
coming
not a false
from.
success.
Thank you. Um, and yeah, that comes from like a lot of auditions where they got back to me and said, "Awesome, we'll keep you in mind." Oh hey, thank you for sending that in. And like you were saying earlier, you can't get discouraged. You have to keep going. And those small successes, it's this is a weird comparison, but it's kind of like Dark Souls, where you're trying to
Life
beat
is like Dark Souls.
that boss, right? And you keep dying. But once you beat that boss, it feels so good, right?
Well,
The difference is in life you die once. So
But you know what? The truth is, the truth is, so much of it, there's so many different reasons why a person may not book a job, and so much of it is often not because their performance isn't good. Like, you'd be amazed at how many times, like, it's a volume thing. There's a million variables as to when there is, casting being done for a project, and like, you may have the perfect voice for a character, but maybe the person you play off of most of the project has a voice that they need someone else to have a different kind of timbre with. Like, there's so many different elements where like you might be a perfect actor, but they're like, shit, there's also this other guy and he fits a little bit better. So, and that happens all the time. I won't even say most, every single role that has ever been cast, there are 5 other guys who've almost been that part
Mm.
because it's never just one person who could do it justice. So there's always one guy who just fits it the most. Whether they're even the most opposite that you think or not, it doesn't matter. Sometimes you're the guy who shows up and you're exactly the opposite of what they had planned, but that's exactly what they didn't realize they needed, and therefore you become the guy. And the other thing is it doesn't matter who you are, doesn't matter how successful you are currently or not. The amount of stuff that you audition for versus the amount of stuff you book is always going to look like this. Auditions you don't book, things you book. And that's like that's the most successful. That's just how it works. Like, every week, the amount of auditions I put out there that I don't book, it's insane. But like, to be able to just keep going and keep working, if I get to work once, like if I book one thing a week, to me that's a victory. To be able to, and like, what happens is you'll end up working you end up working for a week straight because of jobs that you've booked months later and all this stuff that end up get scheduling into place. Like, I've booked gigs 2 months after I've auditioned for them and then forgot, and I was like, oh my god, I totally thought that was already gone. Like, I never thought that I'd get that. I figured that was out the window. And another part of it is, especially if you're getting, hey, we'll keep you in mind for other stuff and all that, that is a huge, huge, huge sign of keep going, because I'm I'm telling you, like, casting directors and all these people, like, they're rooting for you. They're rooting for everyone. They're not going out of their way to be like, I hope this person sucks. You know, Actors are supposed to be the solution to the problem. And if casting a project is, hey, we've got a week to cast this thing, that's a week that they have to deal with that shit. You, like, you're like, I'm gonna throw my hat in the ring. If you do or don't get it, cool or not cool. But to them, they're like, we need to find somebody. Holy shit. Like, we need to find somebody. So it's the kind of thing where, like, they're all in way more pressure than the actors are. The actors put all the pressure on themselves and all the dismissiveness and all the ego. We do it to ourselves. And it doesn't matter, we all still do it. Like, if I audition for a thing and I'm like, oh, I really want that, and I don't hear back from it, like, of course I'm like, I'm the worst actor in the world. It's like, it's what we do to ourselves, but it's also the craziest mentality. It makes no sense. And casting directors are always rooting for you. And if you put in a good audition, they are excited and they're looking forward to the next one. And if you keep sending them good stuff, I don't care if you send the same casting director 50 auditions and don't book anything. They're excited for your 51st. And eventually, when you do book a thing with them, they're going to be like, hell yeah, we're so glad we could bring you in on this thing finally. And that's the thing, is like that stuff starts to happen. You start to go like, oh, it's not me. There's so many of us. There's so many different pieces. There's so many XYZ. And it's also like, it's not one person that gets to decide you're the thing. There's a casting director, there's producers, there's, sometimes it could be like 8 people that have to say yes for you to get one role. It's crazy how it works. So I think the less of that you can like put on yourself, the more you can just focus on what's the audition in front of me and how do I just put myself into that the most and send it off. Like that's all you have to worry about. The rest will resonate off of that and come to you. Sorry, that was a rant.
No, you're good.
Oh, it's your
That was
show.
fantastic.
It's
I
your
want to get
show.
a community question in here real quick. We have Lawrence Brenner at Lawrence Brenner,
Hey, Lawrence.
who asks, "What's a silly line your characters have said that you can use in non-acting interactions?"
Kill you.
Oh man, I don't know. I don't nothing. Sucks. I wish I had something good come to mind. I don't think I have anything like off the top of my head that I can remember. Plus, I feel like most things I say in normal interactions are so bizarre that people are like, "What?" I think I have that
Yeah.
anyway.
I would have loved it if your answer was something stupid like, Cloud, have you killed Sephiroth? Like, you just say that every day.
I'll have to go back and find a line for sure.
Well, I feel like we can probably get back to voice acting later on, but I want to know you really quickly. I want to
Ask
know
whatever you like.
I want to know Ryan Colt Levine, Ryan
Le-
Colt Levy, Ryan Colt Lacroix, whatever. Uh,
I love this.
you've said you are a gamer.
Oh
What
yeah.
is like your go-to type of game to play? Like, what you have 5 hours, or not even 5 hours, like maybe 2 hours.
I'm a
Any
big
game.
I'm a big, like, especially lately, I really love a lot of like indie, like heavy story based games. I just played Katana Zero for the first time. If you guys haven't played it, amazing, like amazing game. And like I love like stuff like that. The Messenger, um, Hollow Knight's my favorite game of all time, basically. Oxenfree. I mean, there's so many games of that kind of like. I love that like weird 8/16-bit kind of like really heavy narrative based weird mix of. I love RPGs. I've been playing Persona 5 for like almost a year.
Persona 5 or Persona
this
5 Royal?
the first one. It's oddly enough because I had never played it and I decided to finally download Persona 5.
Great. Technical difficulties. Technical difficulties are always fun. I lost connection to Discord. Bear with me. Bear with me, everyone. We'll get situated. Hold on. Hold on. Uh-oh. Uh-oh. Oh no. It's all going downhill. It's all going downhill. Real quick. Real quick. Hold up. Hold up. So this is fun. This is what I was hoping wouldn't happen at all. Oh! Well, that was something, of course. Okay. Welcome to Simply Sassy, everybody, where everything goes to hell and back. Okay, give me 1 sec.
It's so unique in every way. It's just such a special, weird experience, and it's so addictive, and it's so way past the point of like necessity of like you roll credits and you're just like you can't stop.
I'm sorry, guys. I crashed. I just lost like the past 45 seconds. It was just
saw
all
you
a gray
crash.
void.
I saw you crash too. I saw you come back and you were just like,
No worries.
It's like
Whatever we
what
lost,
I
just let me know. I'll catch us back up.
you're talking about Hades, I think. Yeah.
Wait, are we back? Is that
Yeah, we're good now. It just
Okay.
Yeah, you were talking about like Last of Us versus
and
Hades.
it was only the 45 seconds, right? Not the entire episode.
no, it was like
It's so
Discord
crazy,
itself just
too.
like crashed and had to reboot itself like for 45 seconds or whatever. But we're good now.
It's so crazy too, because in that 45 seconds he just like dropped his social security and doxed himself. It was
Oh,
Yeah.
like,
I try and do that for like once every chat. No, I think Hades is the most unique experience, and it was so special. And like Supergiant also as a like developer, they're so deserving. They're just so incredible. Um, I loved Last of Us 2 because I genuinely I was really moved by the story in that game. Like completely understanding a lot of people not liking it. Like totally respect that. I personally had a really like moving experience with it, and I was surprised at how much it moved me. Um, but I'm one of those guys who like I love experiencing art that like puts me in a crazy emotional state. Like I want to cry like a baby. Like, I mean Death Stranding was another one, granted from last year, that I know is like not most people's cup of tea. But for me, the experience of it and the kind of weird like loneliness of it spoke to me in a really big way. And I think that like I tend to just love stories and games that push outside of the norm. And I think that in a lot of ways, Last of Us actually did that. It pushed in weird, uncomfortable places for people. But Hades, I think, is just such a unique, singular expression that, like, that to me, I think I've got to go Hades. Plus, the music is so banging.
I've heard a lot
The
about Hades. Yeah.
really cool fact about Hades, the sound designer, the guy who does all the music for that game,
But Darren, yeah.
actually voiced Zagreus, which I
Yeah,
thought was,
and he also voiced Skelly.
yes.
Yeah. Yeah,
That's
Darren
cool.
Korb, he's amazing. He's their sound designer, composer. He's a wizard, man. They're all amazing. They're a team of like I think like fully expanded with like all the pieces, they're probably like 20 some odd people, but like Supergiant for the most part, it's like 11 people or something like that.
We're
And
we're
amazing.
actually working hopefully to get Greg on the show, Greg Casava.
Awesome.
I don't
Awesome.
I don't know if it's going to happen yet, but I asked him out on Twitter and he said, "Hey, send a message to the Supergiant team and we'll see what we can do. Thanks for thinking of me." So hopefully we'll get him on the show. If we do, I'll let you know. If you want
Yeah,
to.
man, for sure. That would be Oh, I would love to. Are you kidding me? I really I find them incredibly endearing as people too. I had watched there's a great documentary that's actually about like the whole making of Hades. There's a bunch
Yeah,
of
no
different
no clip.
videos. It's all on
Danny
YouTube.
O'Dwyer.
Yeah, the No Clip guys, exactly. Yeah. Those guys are amazing. Um but that documentary really endeared me to them because you really saw the human side of their not just experience making the game, but their relationships with each other. And I actually have a couple of friends who are in Hades. One of my friends is uh, um,
Do it, name drop.
Eurydice, uh, and Eurydice, and who's the other one? She's oh man, I'm spacing now. Such a dork.
Is it
But either way,
Persephone? Or no?
yeah, yes, Persephone and Demeter also.
Yeah.
Same voice actress.
I don't know anything about the game, just except for the fact that Persephone's in the game. That's it.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's such a cool, and the voice acting like all over that game is incredible. It is so like detailed in such a personal way. Like every character is so fully realized. They have such amazing personality, and the dialogue literally never ends. Like I have put in so much time into that game, and I'm like, are they still recording? Like it's crazy. It's like they're patching in dialogue. There's so much.
I was about to say, they're like, okay, weird side tangent. When I was a little kid, I thought there were like little people living in my radio, and they're just performing the music like live.
That's a very David Lynch mentality.
So like they're just little people in your TV that are just performing it live at the moment.
I think
Amazing.
one of the most interesting things about the design of Hades was the idea of making the gods just ethnically different. They're not just a bunch of Greek
Yeah.
dudes, because they're supposed to be the gods. They're supposed to represent humanity, and obviously humanity is bigger than just Greece. So I thought it was
Yep.
really cool that they decided to branch out and kind of let these characters represent themselves instead of just being tied to Greek myth. That
It's
was really
so
cool.
true. And it's one of those things that like they don't hit you over the head with it either. They're not like, eh, they
Right.
just do it. And
Yep.
you don't even, and like in a weird way, it's like you notice it, but it just like is like, oh yeah, like it's just a thing. And like that's kind of exactly what we need more in gaming and culture at large, right? It's like that's how you integrate this kind of stuff into the conversation where like you show that it's just we're all these things.
So, and staying on that note, I wanted to ask Ryan if what is have you what is your experience with being typecast as a person of color in terms of doing voiceover versus anything on camera, and if there's anything you have to say about that?
It's definitely been a trip because growing up, I really never felt like I was looked at as a person of color in any way until 9/11. And then anybody who's even like remotely skews was suddenly just terrorist territory to people. So there was a really interesting like overnight flip. I was like, "Oh, people do see me differently. I didn't realize that." And especially depending on like how much facial hair I would be rocking at any given point, you know. But I'm very lucky that in voiceover there's kind of like this cool weird mix where it's almost the opposite. Like on camera, I was really dissuaded at first because I was getting really uncomfortably typecast, where like the stuff I would audition for, whether it was just like on my own accord, you know, I would just throw myself in for anything, and that wasn't based on what I looked like. But when people would like approach me with an opportunity or an offer or something, it was always like
Right.
something that was like really the terrorist or like this or that or like it was all this stuff where it was like, man, like I get it, like, but I don't get it. And I knew very quickly I didn't want to be that actor. I didn't want to be that guy. And I'm not saying that, you know, all of those roles are the same kind of thing, but I didn't want to be the guy that was suddenly just associating myself with those kinds of parts. And so I really didn't have much on camera stuff at all, you know, because I wasn't getting any kind of other opportunity. And
Right.
with voiceover, it's cool because it was the first time in a weird way, like I was getting typecast outside of what I looked like or sounded like. I was getting typecast more for the attitude my voice gave off, or
Who you were.
like, yeah, you know, or someone would, you know, because like people talk to me and they're like, "Oh, you're so nice," and then they see me and that I have tattoos and they're like, "Oh, maybe he's edgy," like you know, and it's like all this, you know, it's funny
Don't carry
perception
yourself
stuff,
on
but
all
that's the
that
kind
edge.
of like you know, but like that's the stuff that will end up like typecasting you more in voiceover and stuff is like it's a personality kind of thing. Um, and what's funny is I feel like in animation and you know video games and stuff, there's actually very little representation of Middle Eastern actors and characters and stories. It's so few that I'm actually in the other side of things here, where I'm kind of like I'd like to see more of that, and I would like to help contribute to that because in that end, I feel like we're open for stories that can, you know, do real good and kind of spread a different kind of awareness. So I do like that I'm starting to see now more auditions for Middle Eastern characters and roles and parts and stories and things. So that stuff is actually starting to come in more, um, because you know creative people are starting to fully realize like you know, the world is more than just a couple of cultures. So it's been a cool mix lately.
What do you mean? Like all the world is white, right Al? Like all the world is Christian. All the world is Christian.
Just
Like
like my booth.
Europe.
Yeah.
Like all the world is Christian white, right Al? Happy Hanukkah, by the way.
Yeah, it's hard
Uh,
because I think what, like off the top of my head, I think of Rashid from Street Fighter Five. Like that, and that's like very recent. I mean, that's within the last 6-7 years. And that's the first most prominent character that pops into my head, and that's just, yeah, it's kind of sad, but it's nice to see that it's becoming more acceptable and more diverse in the industry.
I feel like
Yeah, it's
oh sorry.
no, go
No,
ahead. So you're gonna say.
no, I was just gonna say because Phil is like he's more Native American than that politician. I keep forgetting her name, but like he's like part Native American. Uh, and you're Middle Eastern, and I'm Mexican. I feel like we go through like the same things of representation, where it's like we want more representation of ourselves, and then some white producers are like, okay, I have this cholo, or I have this Native American. We're gonna call him a savage, and I have this terrorist.
Damn, don't gotta call me out like that, Caesar.
Right.
Shit.
Um,
This is the representation episode of Simply Sassy, by the way. There's never been this many people of
It's-
color on screen.
it's always a thing for
Really?
me when I talk about how much Second Son affected me as being someone that, like, wasn't necessarily just like in your face Native American. He just happened to be Native American, even though the game kind of started on the reservation side of it. It still didn't just like shove it down your throat. It was just this guy that happened to be Native American and got superpowers. It was really cool.
Mm. Yeah, I think that it's we're seeing we're seeing missteps just as much as we're seeing people do things right. Like I know obviously Cyberpunk is having a lot of different issues right now, but I know that like a lot of their representing different people's orientations and preferences. They were talking a big game about doing that respectfully, and it seems like that hasn't quite played out in the way that they've executed it. And I think a lot of people, like, as we're searching to create more representation and awareness and reality and inclusion, there's going to be those missteps of people kind of like doing it the wrong way. And then there's people who are making really beautiful versions of that. And I think we're in an interesting crux now where, like, I'm happy that it's just part of the conversation at all, because it means that we're going to find new voices to tell these stories the right way versus just like letting somebody else take over. I think we're finally getting to the point where, like, people are like, well, why is it all white dudes at the writers' table? Like, why is like that's all changing.
Why is it all white straight dudes that are Christian Catholic at the writing table?
Right,
It's
exactly.
like, there's more than just that. Elizabeth Warren, by the way.
Real quick, I want to go back to you kind of feeling 2001 and the towers and everything. Story from my childhood that really kind of showed me how horrible people could be was there was this group of store owners that were always so nice to the community, always giving back, donated to school projects and things like that, and really made themselves a pillar of the community. And then 2001 happened, and all of a sudden they were getting bricks through their windows and death threats saying, go back to your country. And that's not even the worst part. The worst part is that they were Indian.
That's exactly. That's the
Like,
thing, is it just became a thing of no logic, just remote association by whatever people decide is just off color or this or that is
Yeah.
yeah, it's
Remote
it's a
association
dangerous
by
toxic-
hue.
yeah, exactly. Which is crazy.
Phil, I saw that Hassan Minhaj comedy special too.
No, this is a real story from
Yeah.
my town.
I believe it. Yeah.
Absolutely horrible. Anyway,
Yeah,
let's move on to better things, like that Hollow Knight plushie I know you keep by your microphone.
you want me to find? Hold on, it's up here.
For reference, before we started recording, Phil asked
Nice.
Ryan,
You're
"Do
right.
you have your Hollow Knight plushie?"
Got the nail also. The nail's like magnetic, so it actually like
Oh, that's actually
yeah.
sick.
yeah.
That's
I want one.
sick.
This is my pride and joy, man. A friend of mine he sent this to me because he used to work for, what was the name of the company that made this? Fangamer. He used to work
Great
for
company.
yeah, and he hit me up like a little over a year ago and was like, I know how much you like this game. I'm gonna send you a little thing, and this came in the mail, and I was like, oh,
So cool.
and it's funny
Shot
because
in
I'm
the
not a
dark.
plushie guy. Like I don't like collect plushies or anything like that. But this guy is like, he's my little hero. So I keep him in the booth with me.
I'm a little sad because Silk Song since the pandemic has gone completely dark. Like I don't
I'm
know. Go ahead.
No, I'm hopeful because I feel like they're really smart, Team Cherry, about like they're quiet until they're not, and they've they've been one of those shining examples of like we know the game's coming out, but they haven't bothered to like do those like little updates because they're like, what's the point? I'm sure that they're doing everything that they can. I'm sure stuff is halted a bit, but I have to assume that like they're just waiting to do the big drop next because they've given us everything we could possibly need to know at this point. Like we don't need to know they're working on it more.
Right.
I want to play it? Yes, but
Yeah, and
also knowing their caliber, like it's going to be incredible whenever it comes out.
I always temper my expectations because when we were waiting for Hollow Knight to come to the Switch, they were really quiet about it until like really had something to say. Um, and so I knew that it was going to be a wait. But yeah, looking at their Twitter real quick, March 31st was their last tweet up until their most recent one, which was November 20th. But it's all like retweets of like Humble Bundle
Right.
and Fan Gamer stuff, and I'm like, ah.
Yeah,
But
because
yeah,
they're just staying quiet, and it's especially the thing is now it's so interesting being on my end now, being part of making these things, even just in some capacity. It's so different than just being on the receiving end of this stuff because you realize how many different pieces go together, how time and expectancy works differently, how even when things are quiet on one side, they're really noisy on the other side. Like, it may seem like nothing is happening, but I guarantee you everything
yeah,
is happening. And that's the really interesting part about it.
I also imagine they have contracts with like Fangamer. It's like you need to retweet or tweet about this product when it releases or whatever. I would imagine. Like I don't know. I
Oh,
don't
for
work in the
sure, with that
area.
stuff. But and when they do, the thing about like when they do finally drop news on it, like they're gonna go big and people are gonna go crazy for it. So, instead of doing this like slow bleed, because I'm sure the information isn't gonna be that, worth trickling in at this point. They gave us so much on that initial like trailer, the reveal trailer showed so much, and I'm sure that there will be changes too. But I played Hollow Knight for the first time on the Switch, so I came to it later after it had already been out for a while, and I still think, I mean, it's just even just mechanically, like the actual controls are some of the tightest, like most incredible controls I've ever played in any game. So their caliber of what they clearly demand of their own work is so high that I will always wait for the finished product, because I've never been a person who's like, make it come out now, because like look at Cyberpunk, like I'm of the mind like give them a whole other year. Like who cares?
Yeah.
yeah.
Especially there's so many games to play,
Yeah.
We we had a small conversation on this, and it's hard because you have like I just noticed that the game is published by Warner Brothers for Cyberpunk.
Oh, interesting.
And it makes me wonder if it was more of an investor
Yeah,
call than anything
shareholders things.
else. Yeah.
I'm sure to some degree it was because it this is not gonna look good for CD Projekt Red as a developer, like in the eyes of people, right? Like people are gonna look at this and be like, well, they didn't respect us as consumers in all the different ways, and or before this game came out, they had a totally different public perception, right? People were like they're there for the gamer, and I don't think that they're not. I just think that we're in a weird state of demand and how this stuff works, and you know, they're an example, I feel like, of the opposite, where like they were constantly giving people information and updates, and I feel like that pisses people off more than it does, you know, let them prepare for stuff. Like I like forgetting about things and then them surprising me. It's like when you order something in the mail and it takes a little longer than expected, so you kind of just forget, and then eventually it shows up and you're like, oh right, sweet, instead of like just getting mad every day that it isn't in your mailbox.
Yeah.
I, I,
Oh, go
I
ahead,
was gonna
Caesar.
say no. I have the reverse where I just forget about stuff, and instead of a surprise, I'm pissed off because it's like it was an actual commitment I had. Like yesterday, Ben had a charity stream, and I just slept through it. I
Uh,
just like,
Aw.
Yeah,
I
you
just
did.
like, and that's not even the first time I did that. And it's not even the first time I did that with Ben either. Like I've done that so many times.
Aw. Or Ben.
so going back to getting to know Ryan, we asked kind of what your favorite video game stuff was, but what about your favorite movie?
Oh boy. So tough. I I'm gonna give you, instead of saying favorite movie, I'm gonna give you a list of like directors because I'm the worst.
Solid.
Because I've never been good at picking a one thing. Um, I love Paul Thomas Anderson. He like I mean anything from The Master to Boogie Nights, you know, you name it, they're all perfect to
Punch
me.
Drunk Love.
Punch Drunk Love is extraordinary. I mean Philip Seymour Hoffman. Anything with Philip Seymour Hoffman is a win. Um, you know what? Screw it. I'll give you a number one movie.
May he rest in peace. Just throwing it out there.
Oh, dude, I cried so hard. Oh, rest in peace, man. Philip Seymour Hoffman, the king. Um, if I really had to pull a movie out of my ass as like one that I think of, like, m- just does it for me like that, Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind. I
Ooh,
think that
good
is
pick.
a perfect film. I think it is the ultimate relationship film, both as a couple and as an individual. I think it's an incredibly deep look into self-love and love of others, um and it's also just beautifully made and so psychedelic and weird. Everyone's performances are amazing, but it also has one of the greatest last lines in movie history, I think. It just it's probably not a spoiler. We've all seen it. The movie's out for a long time
Yeah,
already.
we've all
But
seen it.
when they have that, you know,
Caesar.
when we have
It's on
you know,
Netflix. You can watch it later.
their like final argument, when the house is crumbling around them and she's like, you're gonna hate me and it's never gonna work and all this stuff and blah 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 blah, and he just looks at her and he goes, okay, and then she looks at him back and she goes, okay, like that destroys me every time, because that to me is the most like beautiful, positive, like it ends on such an up note. And the first time I saw it, I was young, and I remember thinking, because there's that weird like repeat cut at the end, and at first I left thinking it was like on a down note, and since watching it so many times since, I've come to realize it's such a beautiful positive film about like it's the so what, we're gonna be imperfect, we'll have arguments, we're not gonna be ideal because there is no ideal, but I love you regardless, and that is everything. So that's my favorite movie
It's on Netflix, and right now it's like at a 93 on Rotten Tomatoes.
on Netflix now.
Ooh.
93% of Google users like it, so that's always reliable.
Shout out to my OU co-host Erica. That's her favorite movie. Michelle
Oh, hell
Gondry.
yeah.
Check out Be Kind, Rewind, and The Science of Sleep. Phenomenal movie.
So,
Yeah.
Ryan,
It's also the first time I think I was turned on to Mark Ruffalo, 'cause he has a small part in that, and I was like, "Who's
Yeah,
this dude?
he
He's
does.
awesome."
I mean, I'm always
He should
turned
be
on
the
to
Hulk.
Mark Ruffalo, but that's a different story. Ryan, really quickly, what has been like your favorite production to work on, and why is it Robot Chicken? Hey, I found another song.
Question.
So Robot Chicken I didn't work on in any fun capacity.
Like,
I worked for Stupid Buddy Studios for a couple of years, who makes Super Mansion and Robot Chicken, a few things, and they're awesome. They're great people, but I wasn't working in like a very creative position at the time I was at that studio, so I was just happy to hang around and be there amongst all the amazing talent. Um, my favorite thing that I've worked on, I'm actually still working on it. But it's odd because we've announced it, but we don't quite know where it's.
oh, I think he froze.
Uh-oh.
Oh no.
Hello?
Oh
Should
no.
we?
We lost our.
Are you there?
Oh,
Oh, okay, you're back.
he's
You're
back.
back. You're
We're
back.
back.
You're
We're
live.
good.
And he's back.
That's crazy.
That was
He
the
just-
biggest cliffhanger.
He just dropped Final Fantasy
Stopped
7
again,
Remake
yeah.
7, and he's just like,
I don't
he
know if
just
we've announced
said-
it yet, but
he just dropped like the biggest tease in the world, and it's gone.
I will say that there's a show I'm working on now called Droners that it isn't officially released yet, but we've been starting to trickle out news about it. But it's a really cool animated series, and it's got a lot of like environmental stuff in it and a lot of multicultural stuff, and the characters are really interesting and fun. And I think it's going to be really, really, really wild when it actually starts to air. So I'm looking forward to that. But it's like it's one of the first times I've had to really dig in with a character for a full season that is valuable to the show at this level. Versus just being like side characters. You know, this is the first like real long-term commitment, and everyone on the show is so great that I'm just super excited for that one.
that's awesome.
Yo, the
So,
animation is sick. Sorry,
Oh,
I'm watching
dude,
the
it's gonna
trailer
be
right now.
no, it's gonna be wild. Yeah, it's gonna be real wild.
So
This
do you
might
know what
sound
sort of
like,
networks it's coming to?
Sorry.
Do we know what networks and places it's coming to?
So that's the interesting thing is currently we're not 100% sure on where it's landing here in the States yet. So I've yet to like been like, this is where you could find it. And I believe me, I will scream it from the mountains when it's time because I'm
W-
so excited about this one.
Will it ever hit New Zealand, unlike the Animaniacs reboot?
Did that not hit New Zealand?
No.
No,
There's
so
actually a
sad.
really funny video where it's like Yakko's World, but it's only the countries where you can see the Animaniacs reboot in, and it's only the United States and Japan.
That makes me so
Wow.
sad.
Yeah. Like everything else
So
is just
weird.
Yakko dancing. Like it's just.
So do you have to like VPN to watch it then?
It won't even let me do that.
That's
That's right. One day,
wild.
one day. It'll probably eventually be ported to Prime, I think, eventually one day here. But
Yeah, Amazon Prime.
it's
I'm
crazy.
sure will have it.
Yeah, we just got
yeah.
Spring Break. Oh, what is it? Spring Break? No, not Spring Break. Palm Springs, the Andy Samberg one. We just got that last week. So
Oh, yeah.
that's awesome.
It's so interesting that it comes out that way. I didn't realize that it's so detached.
I think it's just Hulu stuff for some reason. Everything else we get pretty early. So
I think it's Hulu and HBO Max are just very not very friendly with international distribution. Like they have to find a different like it's almost like they have to get syndicated into a different distribution thing. Like unlike something like Netflix, which will just be released globally everywhere.
It is crazy how
Yeah.
convoluted it can all get. Like even for me, I try and like at a certain point, I'm like, I don't get it, and I just back off. I'm like, I don't have to worry about this part.
yeah. Caesar, can you bring up the trailer for this? This looks amazing.
To
Have you
you.
got the trailer on
Droners?
you? Yeah.
Yeah, dude, the artwork is wild. It's from this French animation studio that they're
Producer can
just
bring it up.
absolutely incredible.
Mr. Producer Gage can bring it up.
Oh, can he? Oh, sweet.
Uh,
While we're waiting for that, just a quick question that I ask everyone that comes on the show,
God.
because obviously we've been online season. So obviously we've been online friends for a little while now. One thing I really appreciate is just how positive you are on Twitter and how you're always encouraging others.
Oh man.
And one thing, especially is obviously that people may or may not know, but you're obviously a kind of funny best friend, which leads into my next question. So we obviously know, if you've watched the shows previously, Greg Miller, he's everywhere at all times. I don't know how he does it.
What a
We've asked
legend.
all our guests so
What a
far.
legend.
So my question is, I've had this theory where I thought maybe he was an android or a clone of some kind. We've had Nick say that he's possibly a demon. We had Blessing the other week say that he may be some sort of doppelganger. I'd love to know your theory on how Greg can be in so many places at once.
I mean, the only possible answer is I just think that he is true. Here's the thing. So many other things involved in how we've experienced Greg has shown me that he is purely his own thing in every way. I think he is simply an organism that is past anything we've ever seen before. I think Greg Miller is he is just purely a Greg Miller, and we have never experienced one thing like this, and that's why he is capable of doing it. I think it is a whole other kind of species.
Great answer. Love it. But I guess
Seriously, like he's incredible. Like the chicken nugget video that he did, like I don't know if I know that he's kind of starting to do some stuff where he's dipping his toes into like, some more acting work to a little degree, but like
Yeah.
that dude is a phenomenal performer. His commitment to anything, his 1,000% commitment.
Never
Like
forget Lazy
I
Tune
hope,
2.
and if he like even remotely sees this, like, dude, Greg, I hope you know, man, you are a phenomenal actor. Truly.
Yeah, he's incredible.
Oh, he won't watch this. He doesn't watch anything we're on.
I would
He was
like.
on the
Hey, he
last
was on the
one.
show last
He
week.
was on the last one.
And he
Ryan,
an
I have a
excuse to leave.
question.
Wait, I want to point out real quick for Greg, you can check him out in Mike Bithel's new joint, The Solitaire.
Oh yeah, the solitaire. Yeah.
You want to
Yes.
see him do some
Oh.
acting chops?
Oh yeah.
Did you have a
Because Greg needs the
question?
help, yeah.
Yeah, this might.
It's more about
this might sound
Bithel,
like.
okay, Caesar?
Oh, he's desperate for help, yeah. Mike Bethel. Sorry.
All
I'm
right,
just-
this might sound like an acting question, but it's more of a Ryan question. So you get a season order for a 12-episode animated show, and you get to voice the main character, and it can be from any franchise, gaming, movies, what have you. What do you go with? It's a dream sort of
man.
TV show that you can do the main character for.
Oh, I'm totally going Blade Runner.
Nice.
Yeah, totally going Blade Runner. I want to live in that world so bad in a, it's like the ideal private detective, like human soul, what is the meaning of life, technology, like it's all the things. And I love a good noir, so to
I
me
think
that would be the ultimate.
I think that's one of the reasons why cyberpunk for me is like hitting but not hitting at the same time, because I want to exist in that cyberpunk style universe, but like I want to play like my own kind of story, and like that whole noir
Yeah.
side of it would be so cool.
Well, it's interesting that because it's weird. Like I'm not a big first person game player, so cyberpunk, as much as like the world really enticed me, I've had very little impetus to want to play the game because it's not how I like playing games. But it's interesting because in theory I would think that that would have been the approach, as like be anyone you want in this world and like fully experience it, but it seems like it's a lot more on rails than not, which is kind of a bummer, because I definitely have that fantasy of like, the cyberpunk world to just be able to like free flow in, or have your story.
Mhm.
Yeah, Blade Runner to me was always like, there's a sophistication in Blade Runner that I find really interesting because of what the conversations are about in narrative, versus cyberpunk seems like window dressing, for like an experience.
I'm glad my imaginary hypothetical situation can give you what Cyberpunk failed to give you.
Cyberpunk failed on a lot of fronts. And that's one of them.
Well, there you go. There you go, Naughty Dog. Cyberpunk game. Get Ryan in the game. Let's make it.
Naughty Dog. Oh, Naughty
Yeah.
Dog.
You've just
They need something
confused
to work
all
on.
the developers. Yeah.
They need something to work. They need something to work on.
Nintendo, you know what to do.
I mean, to be fair, we don't know what they're
Super
working
giant.
on after Last of Us Part 2.
No.
Maybe it's a cyberpunk narrative
I
driven.
love the juxtaposition from like The Last of Us Part 2, very gritty, very dramatic, very heartbreaking story, to
I'll tell you what, man.
goofy robots in the future.
I'll tell you what, I was talking about it with a friend recently because I'm so excited to see what Naughty Dog does next, because I don't think they're going to go back to the well for more Last of Us for a lot of reasons.
Fair.
I genuinely don't think we need any more. And I'm coming from a place of like, I loved part 2. I feel like it's like Sopranos. Like, it's always going to end with there being more story to tell because it's designed around life goes on, and whatever you decide to end it with, like there's going to be more life. Just like when the first game ended, like, yeah, you could end it there, but obviously there was the option of more story to tell. So I think it's that thing of like, could they keep making them? Sure. But I think this story said so much about even the ripple effect of what 3 or a 4 could theoretically do. And another thing of like, I mean, how many years has Naughty Dog now committed to this one world, this one universe, this one state of mind? Like, there's a certain point at which, even just as creative people, you're ready to branch off and do something else. You know, songwriters don't want to write the same album over and over and over again. You know, so I'm really hoping and excited for the idea of like a Naughty Dog game in space, or like a Naughty Dog game around like something just new characters, new world, new experience, and like their level of storytelling and performance and nuance, but just give me something new. That's so exciting.
Could be
I guess
Blade Runner, just saying.
Be what?
I guess
Could be Blade Runner.
It would
They need to get that lead
explode.
role.
I would
what
explode.
what I meant to say was more along the lines of like, didn't they make like the Uncharted games?
Yep.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
like they have a trend of like the adventure in the forest type game, like.
But that which is all the more reason why like I can see
Oh
them
yeah,
being
that'd be
like, well,
exciting. It'd be exciting if like they
Yeah.
just did something in the future with
Yeah.
like.
and like the thing is they have, you know,
They have
their
a
world
trend.
building skills, their mechanics, like all the stuff that they do are great. So it's like it's not like they have to change, you know, reinvent the wheel of like gameplay. I think what Naughty Dog does best personally is it's how they tell a story. It's the performances they get. That's where they are at their strongest. Like their actual gameplay mechanics are wonderful to me, but like it's not like they're, you know, changing the game in that way. They're doing things that like
Gage?
yeah, like
I was just looking at games the whole time.
Gage
what-
tweeted
mind
out
me.
something
Don't
about.
mind me.
Oh,
Don't mind me.
oh, get into it.
please get into it, Gage. I'm with you. I'm with you 100%. And
Gage
so is
tweeted
Ryan.
Gage tweeted out like, Naughty Dog games are not fun, essentially.
No. Gage
No,
said, gameplay wise, technically, they're not as good as they
basically
are
what I
story wise.
said, I've always loved Naughty Dog games. Like I've always kind of put Naughty Dog on a pedestal. But
Gage is also a developer.
well, that's a stretch. I'm trying to be. I'm still learning, but being a couple months removed from The Last of Us Part 2, like I have my issues with it. I like a lot about it. There's a lot that I don't like. There was a couple story elements that I feel like if they would have spent literally one day rewriting, I would have believed what happened way more than what actually happened. But that's
For sure. I know what you're saying.
whole other conversation. But the thing that I kind of started to realize the more I thought about it was Naughty Dog makes incredible stories that are accompanied by somewhat mediocre gameplay that is great the first time because it's like, oh, I can't wait to see what happens. But then upon trying to replay,
Right,
like,
it's part of the experience.
yeah, like I love Uncharted 2 and Uncharted 4. Like I think 2 is probably my favorite Naughty Dog game ever.
4 is the opening of 4 with jumping like around, like hiding in
It's
the
so good.
at night in the, you know, the escape. Yeah, like for sure. But I totally agree with you.
Yeah.
Like I'm on board with that. Like the mechanics are. It's funny because I actually played the first Last of Us game years after. Like I came to it late. So by the time I had played it, I was like, I really love this story and I'm really enjoying this game, but like Joel is stiff. Like he is clunky to use. Like I'm not having a great time.
Yeah.
And
How
I felt like
how many
Yeah.
years after? Because I think I can beat you on that one.
I played it like almost 2 years
Okay.
ago. It was like pretty recent.
Real quick.
I played that after Last of Us 2 came out. So
Oh wow.
Oh well, that's crazy.
Just real quick. The exact tweet is,
Oh god.
here's a controversial opinion. Naughty games aren't fun to play. Their narratives are great, but only worth a single playthrough because the gameplay is usually a repetitive bore fest. I used to hold Naughty Dog on a pedestal, but recently I've wanted to replay their games, and I tried, and wow, I was bored as hell.
It's
Even
true,
my
though.
beloved Uncharted 2 couldn't keep my attention anymore.
That's the thing.
So-
It's like as much as I loved them, like the first time playing them, especially back in the day, I feel like the Uncharted games were excellent. But now, having played things like 2018's God of War, where something as simple
Well,
as
God of War
calling back-
is a masterclass
yeah,
in every way.
but it's like something as simple as calling back the Leviathan axe, and the fact that it's act so simple like that felt so
Well,
satisfying.
I think that's the thing is that's the thing though, is it's not simple, right? Like it's simple
correct.
when we're like in our mind, we're like, oh yeah, you throw a thing, you catch it. Like of course that's a simple idea, but like to make it work right and feel right and actually be what it was, that's fucking crazy difficult, you know?
Yeah, I
So
brought
I
that
think
up
that's
last
what's so
week.
interesting.
I brought that up last week about the Avengers, where Thor has the same ability, but it doesn't hit like it should. But
There you go. And
yeah,
talk about like flawless game mechanics, Hollow Knight and Hades, man. Like perfect. I mean, Hades, any weapon you use, the second you understand how to use it, you feel the weight of it, you know how to manage yourself. Like it's a constant shifting sense of mechanics that are always gifting you new ways to play.
Especially
It's
when you
extraordinary.
incorporate like the boons and everything.
Yeah. It's
Um,
extraordinary. It's such a dense system of mechanics and playability and creativity. So I'm all with you, and I do think that like it's like I was saying anyway, is that I think Naughty's strength is story,
yeah,
but to double down on that, like outside of who I also think Santa Monica, I'm so excited for God of War 2 because Corey
absolutely.
is an extraordinary director. That whole team is incredible.
Yeah,
They are clearly putting so much heart into it. Um, but like they and Naughty Dog, I really think like collectively story wise are doing the best work on that level. You know, even with someone like I adore Kojima and I really loved Death Stranding, but like the story falls apart in for so many different reasons, and it's like it's kind of an ideal story for me, like all the stuff that it's about, like it's so what I want, but I felt like it wasn't executed in a way that had the real weight by the end of it. Whereas when I played Last of Us Part 2, I actually finished it and literally played through it again immediately because emotion of it was so profound that I was like, I need to now, especially because of the way the game plays, I was like, I need to play this again, like really see all the pieces from the start and like really get the little nuances of everything. And it was such a rewarding emotional playthrough. I do think that they've refined things more. It is smoother. It's more fun to play part 2 than it is part 1, even remastered. But I agree, like, that's you don't necessarily play them for like constant repetitive gameplay.
right. Like run through this segment, shoot these guys, run through this. Yeah, it's
That's my biggest thing with Uncharted was that felt more egregious there. Like Uncharted felt more like shoot the guys, run here. It was like a set piece every
yeah,
like 10 minutes.
yeah.
So what I'm hearing is like Gage likes his naughty narrative more than mechanics. Right? Just gonna
What did you say?
he likes his naughty narrative more than he likes his naughty mechanics. All right, just gonna take note of that.
real quick though, now
Shout out to
you
Dragon's
said,
Dogma. I can't forget this
you,
episode. Dragon's Dogma. Go play it again.
you said God of War 2,
Mhm.
but is it actually God of War 2? Because Tim
Oh,
Geddes
God.
would have you believe that God of War Ragnarok might be more of a Miles Morales sort of game.
That would be interesting. Well, I haven't seen
The boy.
what Tim was talking on, what tips he may have been given as to think that. Just toss the cat. We just manhandle it.
We don't want to get
Um,
canceled too.
yeah, there was very like, I wish it was a company, but like, wow. I'm curious because I mean, look, I'm up for anything that Sony Santa Monica wants to put out. It's going to be amazing. Just like Miles was amazing. Like I don't know if you guys played it. I played through it recently and I was like, this game is incredible. Like it's uh, I don't need any more than this. I wonder if that is the idea and like then they're going to long-term work on part 2, or the sequel or whatever, or if they were already there's that element of like if they're using the same engine, if they're doing all the same to some degree, things can be streamlined a lot quicker than the production of the first game. But they totally could do that with the story. I mean, it's sort of like the post-credit scene is really what makes it go like, well, do they just go from there? The other question I thought is do they pick it up right from that moment, or do they like jump ahead a couple of years? Like, is Atreus going to be like a teenager? Like I'm kind of curious how they play that all out.
Yeah, I can't wait. It's gonna be awesome.
It's gonna be so good.
That post-credit scene was so hype. It was so good.
Oh yeah, that game, and it's funny because like I'd never played a God of War game before that, and I remember, I was always like I always remembered the commercials from the other games because they were really great commercials, like selling all from 2 to whatever, with like him and his wife and his daughter like turning into the ash on him and everything. But the actual games always seemed like so not my kind of thing, where it was just like, dude, yeah, killing stuff and like, like very just like it was like the man rock of video games. And to me it was like that's cool, but like it's not my thing. And this, from the first moment, where he's cutting down the tree, you're like, oh, this is what this is. And it's so powerful. And Christopher, his performance is on another level, man. You haven't played?
It's backwards. Sorry, I forgot about that. Whoops. I haven't played God of War, so I took off my headphones.
Well,
Uh,
got you. Well,
We just still
I
covered
don't
the
think I threw
entire
in any
plot.
spoilers, but I will say
the
you owe it to yourself to play it, and you don't need to play the other games. You can just start with this one.
the original games were great action games, but if you wanted like that sort of action, like Devil May Cry and stuff like that, was where I wanted to be. Like the God of War
I played the
universe,
hell out of Bayonetta for that reason.
yeah,
Yeah.
Bayonetta was great.
Yeah.
Um, but I'd much rather
I,
play that sort of action game than something like the original God of Wars.
I
Yeah,
just
well,
no,
oh, sorry, what were you gonna say?
I was gonna say I just feel like you're like Phil's long lost like brother or something because you two have like the same taste in games. It's crazy.
Well, I think the thing about the reason why like it works for me with like Bayonetta is because that game is so self-aware and funny and silly, and like it works in that like over the top hack and slash kind of thing where it's not macho at all. It is so like, isn't this ridiculous? And you're like, yeah, it is. Hell yeah. But I'm such a now in this day and age when games are so cinematic and they can take you to that level, like that is so much more attractive to me as a storytelling thing. So, like with a studio like Santa Monica, they're never going to go backwards from here. They're now in such a high. They're the top tier echelon of quality, of storytelling, of nuance, and they're now. It's like now they're expected to deliver the unexpected, instead of be what they're known for.
Yeah, I'm a little worried about Cory Barlog's mental health because the, the anticipation for this next entry is got to be
So
absolutely
heavy.
mind-numbing and heavy for him, and he already like had such a huge challenge bringing God of War back into the limelight. Like I don't want to know what that kind of pressure is like.
Yeah, I can't imagine. I mean, that first documentary, Raising Kratos, is one of my favorite documentaries. I've seen it so many times. I think it's such a love letter to anybody who's ever tried to make anything, because you just so immediately understand the struggle of what it's like to have to do something that you love. And that 5-year journey that they went through, from moving studios to all kinds of stuff to shelving another side project that they had, there's so much heartbreak and so much triumph and so much of everything. And you hear from so many different facets of the development team about all of their hurdles of just creating that game, that now all of that is like they're coming into this with all of that confidence and strength and joy of like, we've got this thing under our belt, but also the weight of like, oh my god, how do we even remotely touch that again, and how do we make fans happy, and how do we bring this into a new fold. It's the pressure must be insane. but
Yeah.
um but he's such a I I I mean, I don't know the dude personally, but like the way that he carries himself both on social media and in any way I've seen him, like he's so gracious, and he's got such a like chill, wonderful attitude that, so like it makes me, and I think a lot of us feel this way. It's like it makes you feel good knowing he's the guy.
Mm.
Right?
Yeah. Especially in that documentary, it's so raw just seeing,
So
what he
raw.
goes through, especially from beginning to end.
Yeah.
It kind of surprises me that PlayStation actually let them put that out there because, man, there's some stuff in there that, yeah, definitely. I won't spoil it, but you definitely go watch it if you haven't seen it. It's
Oh
great.
yeah, and not just him. I mean, Shannon and like a
Mhm.
lot of the like even producers, like everyone that normally a lot of people would either just have no comprehension exists, or think of like they're the suits or whatever, and
Mm.
the curtain is pulled back and you see all of these people as humans and their passion for what this is. And it's I think the reason that documentary works so well is because you genuinely see what, like, that documentary shows you why the game is what it is.
Mm.
Those people made that game.
And it also shows you that a game can be, well, what was considered at the time, not to be a great game at all. In fact, was it Shu, wasn't it, that said that he didn't like it at all? He wasn't like Corey was struggling to win him over, and then to
Oh
turn it
yeah,
from where
yeah,
it
yeah.
was into one of the greatest games of all time. Like it's unreal what the difference time can make. And yeah,
Well, I think a crazy thing too is like I don't think people realize how even when games are like about to be released, like how right before they're about to come out, they could be like so broken.
yeah,
Like most games are probably looking and feeling like how Cyberpunk, feels to people now, but like I bet you there are points where God of War felt like that to them and they were like, "Oh my God. Oh my God." Oh,
Mhm.
like so it's crazy how this stuff comes together at all. And I yeah, my hat's off to any development team, man. Like these guys, whether they're working through crunch or not, like they're all such rock stars. Like the stuff that these people are doing is so beyond my comprehension. It,
I
it goes
would.
back to like, oh, sorry, what were you gonna say?
I was just gonna say. I always say it's magical, like it's cyber magic that these games
They're
even
wizards, man. Total wizards.
because I mean they're working on them up through the very point that they're released and beyond,
And
and
beyond, yeah.
all these things come together and work, and we get to have these amazing experiences that in all reality shouldn't exist by like all the work that's put into them.
Yeah,
It's just
man. Video
magic.
games are amazing. I will never be that guy who is, bitter towards
Mm.
developers or any kind of delay or anything. I'm always going to be an advocate of like push the release because
Mm.
I believe in the mental health and physical health of these people making these things. And you know, uh, time is so funny where like if you try and look ahead 3 months, it feels like it's going to take forever. But if you looked back 3 months, it's instantaneous. And it's that thing of like, whenever a game gets released, it's released then you can play it. Anticipation is like this weird can be such a weird toxic thing um for no reason. I think that you'd rather play the thing and enjoy it versus like have this constant state of like turmoil and aggression and whatever it is. Like nobody wants to play a game to be pissed at it and nobody wants to
Mm.
put out a bad game. So we have to somehow find a way to like whether it's shareholders or this or that or society or the fans and all this stuff, like everyone has to start understanding that like games are going to take more time, especially now. And we would rather have something that all these people can put their time and heart and soul into healthily that we can play and celebrate versus like, the different versions of messes and arguments we have now. And it's never going to be perfect, but yeah, I'll always advocate for pushing a game versus crunch.
I think that's kind of a magical moment to kind of end on. I think
For
that's
sure.
I don't know how we can top that. That's that was beautiful.
Oh man, thank you guys so much for having me. This is such a fun hang. I'm
Oh,
honored.
yeah.
Yeah,
Thank
thank you
you
so
for
much for
coming
coming on.
on.
It's been
Yeah,
awesome.
thank you for coming on.
Yeah, you following Ben was the most awesome thing to happen. Otherwise, this wouldn't exist.
Oh
Yeah,
man,
dude.
I
Also, I
appreciate
just
you guys so much.
It's a give and
also
take. You have to see Milk Mommy photos, but you get to be on a podcast. So it's just like,
Oh no, dude, it's like I
good
love
stuff.
seriously like all of anytime like in my feed one of these crazy Photoshop things show up, it makes my day. Like I'm cracking up constantly. You guys are
Well,
brilliant.
if you get the
I'm
chance,
glad.
check out our Simply Sassy Not KFAF Photoshop challenge because you get to see a lot more of it.
Amazing. I will watch that later for sure.
No,
Uh,
thank you so much, Ryan. That's been just awesome. And yeah, once again, just a huge thank you for everything you do in the community with, like, so especially on Twitter, just being so positive and always putting positive messages out there. And I know you support a lot of people in the voice acting community, and yeah, just thanks for everything you do.
Appreciate you, my friend. You guys are all wonderful, and I will happily hang anytime with you. So please let me know.
Absolutely.
I guess right now is like your 15 seconds to sell whatever you want.
You might want to rephrase.
Ladies and gentlemen, let me tell you about this car.
So like if there's anything you want to direct people towards.
I don't have anything. All the stuff that I want to promote, I can't promote just yet. So I'll just shamelessly plug myself. You can find me on Twitter and all this stuff at Ryan Colt Levy. I think I'm on Instagram at Ryan Colt. So you just chop off the last name. But yeah, I'm
Chop
always
off the
around
damn
to be a
jeans.
goofball.
Um,
Chop off.
now,
Yeah.
can you tell us when you're going to be playable in Genshin Impact yet, or is that still under wraps?
I wish I had an answer for that myself. Right now, you can find me as a few random NPCs and stuff all over the game, but I will let you know when there will be some stuff. Well, what I will say is 2021, you'll be able to have a lot more fun with me.
Oh.
Oh, is that a promise or a threat? Is that
Can't wait.
one last question, because you are a Final Fantasy VII remake. I have to ask you this. I'd be remiss if I didn't ask you this. Are you going to be in Smash?
Am I gonna be in Smash?
And are you going to kill Mario or almost kill Mario?
Dude, that image is so good.
So funny. No, but again, thank you for coming on. It was a blast.
Thank you,
to have
guys.
on.
Thank you so much. Much love to you, friends. Stay safe. Have a wonderful, wonderful rest of the weekend, and we will talk soon.
And for the viewers and listeners, thank you for listening to Out of Our League, and we'll catch you next time.
Yeah, we'll explain who we are some other day.